A bad ending can ruin an entire story. Just ask the fans of these properties. Welcome to WatchMojo, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 movie and TV endings that caused major fan backlashes.
Why do you think I came all this way?
For this list, we're looking at controversial endings of both films and television shows that caused an enormous amount of fan backlash. We're going to be somewhat loose about the definition of ending, as we'll be including entire series finales, last films in a series, and the endings themselves. Basically, if the overall story fizzled out and upset the fan base, it will be considered. And finally, a spoiler alert is now in effect.
And every action I take, no matter how violent or how cruel, is for the greater good of my people.
Number 10, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. We can handle the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Grail, but extraterrestrials pushed our suspension of disbelief just a bit too far.
One being physically separate, but with a collective consciousness.
The ending of this film is just a giant collage of science fiction tropes, filled with aliens, telepathic communication, flying saucers, and portals to other dimensions. Audiences were already feeling irritated early on after the now infamous nuking the fridge nonsense, only to ultimately discover that the story had been leading to aliens and UFOs. Fans remain divided over this film, with some calling it an enjoyable adventure with an unfair reputation, while others, including Shia LaBeouf, think it's an utter travesty that tarnished the legacy of Indiana Jones.
Name's Mutt. Mutt Williams.
Mutt?
Yeah.
What kind of name is that?
It's the one I picked. You got a problem with it?
Take it easy.
Number 9, Seinfeld.
Jerry! Jerry! He wants to talk about Jerry! He wants to talk about Jerry! Jerry! Jerry!
Audiences weren't really expecting much from the Seinfeld finale, as the show never really had an overarching story or much important character development. But even a regular episode would have been better than what we got. Fans and critics alike hated the downer ending and the unsympathetic portrayal of the cast, even though, when you really think about it, they were never very good people.
That's not Moops, you jerk. It's Morse. It's a misprint.
I'm sorry, the card says Moops.
Maybe they just hated to see it piled on in such a blatant and obnoxious fashion. Others hated the blatant fan service through the inclusion of beloved characters and having characters rehash their classic jokes and storylines. The finale is generally considered to be little more than a dour, glorified clip show, and it is not how we wanted Seinfeld to go out.
That's not so bad. We'll be out in a year. And then we'll be back. Could be fun. Don't have to worry about your meals or what you're gonna do Saturday night.
Number 8, The Matrix Revolutions. We don't think a trilogy has ever crashed and burned quite like the Matrix film series.
You played a very dangerous game.
Change always is.
The first is an all-time classic. The second is a solid, if unsatisfying, sequel, and Revolutions was a massive disappointment that left many shaking their heads. For one thing, a large chunk of the movie centered on the Battle of Zion, a technically impressive but protracted and emotionless action sequence that was filled with unengaging subplots. Neo and Trinity were seemingly in the movie for like 20 minutes, and the film itself concluded in overly obvious Jesus imagery that had many rolling their eyes. Add in some general confusion regarding the plot, dropped storylines, and a lack of philosophical engagement, and you have a conclusion that failed to dodge the critical bullets.
Did you always know?
Oh no. No, I didn't.
Number 7, Man of Steel.
You're a monster, Zod. And I'm gonna stop you.
The dark, violent, and dreary Man of Steel is one of the most divisive superhero movies of all time. And the qualities of its ending are still debated. To save a family from Zod, Superman murders him by snapping his neck. It was a major creative risk, but unfortunately it didn't pay off. Many fans, especially Superman comic devotees, were outraged and thought that the murder was woefully out of character and tone-deaf to the Superman mythos. Others have called it fake edgy and dark for the sake of being dark. Of course, it also has its defenders, including Henry Cavill himself. So what do you think? Is it a bold and daring take on a classic character, or insultingly out of touch? Number 6, The Sopranos.
I put in a lot of effort with Sophia. Baking together, I think we actually have a bond.
There are few, if any, other endings in TV history more famous than The Sopranos. You know how it goes. The door to the diner opens, Tony looks up, and the screen cuts to black. This brave and ambiguous conclusion resulted in all sorts of reactions, from adoration all the way to frustration, confusion, and disbelief. Literal disbelief, as many people thought that their cable had cut out. So what happened to Tony? Who was the man that glanced at him? What does the sudden cut to black signify? All these questions trickled out, and no one had any answers. The intentional ambiguity was its downfall. However, the ending has since undergone a bit of a reevaluation, and is now considered one of television's finest. Number 5. Dexter.
Sorry.
No, don't start blaming yourself.
Coming from Mr. I screwed up your life, Dad.
That image of a bearded Dexter staring into the camera has been burned into our collective consciousness, but for all the wrong reasons. Dexter had been arguably going down the tubes since season 5, but the holdouts remained hopeful that the series could at least provide a satisfying conclusion. Instead, it did the exact opposite, and aired what many claim was one of the worst series finales of all time. Audiences despised the sloppy writing, lack of excitement, and the cop-out ending, with Lumberjack Dexter becoming a meme in the following weeks. The whole climax was so bad that the official Dexter subreddit began talking about Breaking Bad instead. You know it's terrible when even the show's most diehard devotees refuse to discuss it.
I want you to remember that every single day until I see you again. Daddy loves you.
Okay. Bye.
Number 4. How I Met Your Mother.
To Ted.
Don't say it.
Evelyn.
Thank you for that.
It seems like sitcoms rarely stick the landing, and How I Met Your Mother is commonly cited as the worst offender of all. Jeez, where do we even start with this one? How about with the most egregious decision? Killing off the mother and having future Ted go back to Robin. It was a terrible disservice to Tracy, and it absolutely ruined 9 seasons worth of romantic tension. But that was just one of many problems, including the sudden dissolution of Barney and Robin's marriage, despite an entire season's worth of build-up, and Barney's abrupt regression in character. Fans desperately hoped the finale was an early April Fool's joke, while others signed a Change.org petition calling for a do-over. Instead, we got an alternate ending on the DVD box set. Well, it's something, we guess. Number 3. Lost.
Can I help you?
It's okay. I'm a cop.
Maybe you should read the machine its rights.
Lost's ending remains highly contested and divisive to this day. It really does seem like you either love it or hate it, and unfortunately, a lot of people hated it.
I think Desmond's gonna be okay.
Jack's gone.
The finale, and the entire final season for that matter, gets a lot of flack for veering into fantasy and spirituality, and many were left disappointed with the show's unsatisfactory revelations. A lot of mysteries boiled down to magic stuff, and those who spent hours meticulously theorizing and debating felt like they'd been slapped in the face. Others hated that the intriguing Flash Sideways timeline was not some sort of alternate dimension, but boring old purgatory. It was satisfying to see the characters reunite and conclude their personal journeys, but the island story was a total narrative mess.
I think you do what you do best. Take care of people.
Number 2. Game of Thrones.
Build the new world with me. This is our reason. It has been from the beginning, since you were a little boy with a bastard's name. And I was a little girl who couldn't count to 20.
We all saw the cracks starting to appear. Some think they started forming once the show passed the books. Others think it was when John and company went to fetch a white. And many others think it was sometime around the Long Night, when the Night King was disposed of in the most convenient manner possible. While we likely will never agree on when the show started to slip, many believe the last season, particularly the finale, was a disaster. It seemed painfully rushed, it abandoned important character arcs, hello Jamie, it hurried through important character arcs, Mad Queen Dany anyone, and it threw out all sense of logic. It's a shame that the most ambitious television show in history went down faster than Rhaegal. quite at the end yet. Almost there though. Just be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Alright, back to business. Before we face disappointment with our top pick, here are some honorable, or in this case, dishonorable mentions.
Here's my son. I talk to him. I don't even know if he can hear me. 'Cause he sits there all day long in his own world, staring at that toy.
Number 1. Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi.
And I will not be the last Jedi.
Nothing gets the internet in a tizzy quite like The Last Jedi. For many, the entire movie was a mess, but it particularly fell apart in the latter half. First, there was Kylo killing Snoke, a mysterious character that many believed would last far longer than he actually did. Talk about having your expectations subverted. Then, Finn and Rose easily defeated Phasma, one of the more interesting newer villains in the Star Wars sequel trilogy. And then came the kicker, killing off Luke in such an anticlimactic and confusing fashion. A famous Change.org petition was created, calling The Last Jedi, quote, a travesty that completely destroyed the legacy of Luke Skywalker and the Jedi. And yeah, that pretty much sums up the majority of the vocal internet's thoughts on the matter. Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.